and meanings of the Civil War. The scourge of war, he explained, was best understood as divine punishment for the sin of slavery, a sin in which all Americans, North as well as South, were complicit. It is a national moral debt that had been created by the bondsman 250 years of unrequited toil and ends with a call for compassion and reconciliation. At a White House reception later that day, Lincoln talked to Frederick Douglass and mentioned to Mr. Douglass that he had seen him in the Capitol crowd and asked him for his opinion of the speech. Douglass's response aptly summarized the theologically rich speech. Mr. Lincoln, it was a sacred effort. The speech ends with these familiar words of peace, harmony, and commitment to working together. Let's watch an excerpt from the Steven Spielberg 2012 movie, Lincoln.
Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet if God wills that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. As was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and a lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
The original score to the 2012 film Lincoln earned John Williams an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Score. It was one of his record 53 nominations. John Williams scored with Malice Toward None this theme for strings alone originally, later for piano, for cello and piano for Yo-Yo Ma, and for what I think is the best version, for solo trumpet plus orchestra. We shall present this full orchestra version today with our principal trumpet, David Costello, playing the solo. I suggest we all think about Lincoln's words as we play the music. Early in the Civil War, Union soldiers were making up new lyrics to the tune of an old hymn, "Say, Brothers, Will You Meet Us?" The ghost of the abolitionist loomed large in a marching song called "John Brown's Body Was Born." John Brown's Body became super popular among Union soldiers for several reasons. Of course, for one, it was easy to sing. Secondly, the lyrics were simple, but more importantly, it glorified the righteous fight against slavery. Even African American soldiers picked up the melody and added their own spin using the lyrics, "We're done with hoeing cotton, we're done with hoeing corn, we're colored Yankee soldiers just as sure as you were born." A year later, Julia Ward Howe, a poet and outspoken advocate for justice, came to Washington, D.C. to visit the Union troops. As she did so, Confederacy attacked, but the Union soldiers defended and impressed Howe by their spirit. Her minister, who was traveling with her, pushed her to rewrite this song, John Brown's Body, they'd been singing. Rewrite it and elevate it, he said. Make that song richer for a kind of educated audience. Reborn as the Battle Hymn of the Republic, Howe's version is the one we know best today. Song has been used to root for college football teams and as an anthem for labor unions. Evangelist Billy Graham, who helped popularize the song among us Christians, even took it to the Russian Army chorus in 1992. The day before he was killed in 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made his famous "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech, which he ended by quoting the first line of the refrain, "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." His home church, Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist, took up the song after his death as an anthem to him and the civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King had come to Memphis twice before to give aid to the Memphis sanitation workers' strike. April 3, 1968 was his third attempt to restore nonviolence in Memphis, and it was raining heavily. King was exhausted, he had developed a sore throat and a slight fever. He asked Ralph Abernathy to take his place at that night's scheduled mass meeting at Bishop Charles Mason Temple. As Abernathy took the podium, he could sense the disappointment of the crowd, which had turned out in the hundreds to hear King speak. Abernathy called King at the hotel and convinced him to brave the bad weather, come down to the temple. When King arrived, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. The 39-year-old King took the podium, began to speak to the audience extemporaneously. Let's listen to an excerpt of that speech.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Above all, King was a minister, a pastor, a teacher. He knew Scripture. His words parallel one of my favorite Bible passages, the Apostle Paul's words from 2 Timothy chapter 4. where Paul says, "For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." Now turning to Robert Frost, 20th century poet. One of the most celebrated poets in America, Frost was an author of searching and often dark meditations on universal themes. President John Kennedy, at whose inauguration Frost delivered a poem, said of the poet, "Frost saw poetry as the means of saving power from itself. When power leads man towards arrogance, poetry reminds him of his limitations. When power narrows the areas of man's concern, poetry reminds him of the richness and diversity of his existence. When power corrupts, poetry cleanses." Today, we present Randall Thompson's musical setting of one of Frost's most famous poems, "Choose Something Like a Star." The poem focuses on humanity's need for guidance from a higher power, from God, in order to defy the mob mentality. Frost plays with these genres of thought of religion versus science by blending different aspects of each into the poet's urgent plea to a star. The very first line, Frost echoes a traditional prayer to God with a reverential tone and starts with the term "Oh," as we often start prayers, "O God, O Lord." Later, when the star declares, "I burn," Frost introduces the then popular scientific thought and describes the narrator's plea for specific quantitative information about the star. Knowledge of the star isn't good enough. The narrator wants scientific evidence of the star's temperature and elemental makeup. Here are two excerpts from the poem. "O star, the fairest one in sight, we grant your loftiness the right to some obscurity of cloud. It will not do to say of night, since dark is what brings out your light." And later, "Say something to us we can learn by heart, and when alone repeat, say something." And it says, "I burn." But say with what degree of heat? Talk Fahrenheit, talk centigrade. The human tries interrogating the star in scientific terms. The poet begs the star to say something, and all the star can say is, "I burn." The poem seems to me to summarize the response of many of us facing the question of the existence of God. We're awed by the mystery of creation. We long for our own souls for contact with God. At the same time, we're often frustrated that God doesn't produce the data we desire to verify his existence in scientific terms. God doesn't speak in centigrade, of course. Nevertheless, we sense the invitation to choose. And in the choosing, we find ourselves grounded amidst the noise of the mob. Choose something like a star, or better yet, avoid the mob and choose God. Over 2 centuries ago, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 nearly doubled the size of the United States. It was one of the most colossal land transactions in history. It involved an area larger than mainland Europe plus the British Isles in total. All or parts of 15 western states would eventually be carved from its nearly 830,000 square miles, which stretched from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada, from the Mississippi River across the Rocky Mountains. In 1803, France was militarily overextended. Napoleon was running short of funds to continue his war against Britain. So Napoleon offered all of the Louisiana Territory to the U.S. for $15 million. It's a breathtaking bargain. Louisiana Purchase extended the U.S. nearly from sea to shining sea, with only the acquisition of California needed to finish the job. In the concert, we salute this expansion with a musical medley called From Sea to Shining Sea, which I know you'll recognize all of the songs. Moving a century later to the period between World War I and II, George and Ira Gershwin wrote a musical called Strike Up the Band. It was considered so scathingly harsh and grim in 1927 that audiences rejected it. It was an anti-war musical, and it died in Philadelphia. The original had no resemblance to the much later Julie Garland, Mickey Rooney film version that most of us know. The Gershwin Strike Up the Band was certainly not a Ziegfeld musical. It underscored human beings' often trivial rationale for going to war. The show damned profiteering, jingoism, diplomacy, business manipulations, and government's participation in that. The original book centered on a Wisconsin cheese tycoon. Now just think about this. Wisconsin cheese tycoon who tries to maintain his monopoly on the American market by convincing the US government to declare war on Switzerland to curtail cheese imports. As you might imagine, the story ended rather darkly. Political satire was not the stuff of a successful musical comedy, and the show died in Philadelphia, never made it to Broadway until 3 years and many revisions later. However, in this 3-year later development, I found a short video from 1929 rehearsal, and George Gershwin himself is directing the singers and dancers and playing the piano. I thought you might enjoy seeing this very quick clip.
Tell you what we do. While we're waiting for them, let's take the girls and the buck dance and strike up the band. Good. All right, kids, come on. Strike up the band. Hurry up. All right? Ready?
We're using Strike Up the Band's title song to open the second half of today's concert. And in a series of revisions over the years, the original intent of the lyric was totally changed. It originally started as a sarcastic anti-war song, quoting the original lyrics. We're in a bigger, better war for your patriotic pastime. We don't know what we're fighting for, but we didn't know the last time. However, by 1940, war in Europe was spreading. Ira Gershwin changed the lyrics to, we hope there'll be no other war, but if we're forced into one, the flag we'll be fighting for is the red and white and blue one. That didn't last too much either. But after we joined World War II, Ira altered the lyric once again, and this time he said, let the drums roll out, let the trumpet call, while the people shout, strike up the band. With the flag unfurled, we can lick the world. Hey, leader, strike up the band. Those are the lyrics we remember. Our arrangement will take it from being a march to being a Latin piece, and will include the caissons go rolling along, the Navy hymn and Marine Corps from the halls of Mount Montezuma, all layered on top of Strike Up the Band. Well, let's talk about women of World War II. American women were instrumental in the war effort, with ever-growing orders for war materials combined with so many men overseas fighting the war. Women were called upon to work in ways previously reserved only for men. Here is the famous song you'll recognize, Rosie the Riveter.
All the day long, whether rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage. Sitting up there on the fuselage, that little frail can do more than a male can do. Rosie, the riveter. Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine. When they gave her a production knee, she was as proud as a girl could be. There's something true about red, white, and blue about Rosie, the riveter. Rosie, the riveter. Rosie, 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 working on assembly line.
We all knew that song, right? And this is probably the most famous image of female patriotism during World War II. Women were involved in many aspects of the war effort outside of factories, however. While more than 6 million women took wartime jobs in factories, including my mother, 3 million volunteered for the Red Cross, and over 200,000 served in uniform in the military. Women's auxiliary branches were created for every branch of the military, and in our concert, we're going to salute women in uniform who performed the same jobs as men. They even trained men to do their jobs better. They trained some men to fly airplanes. They trained men to shoot not only rifles, but artillery pieces. You'll be impressed by the video we show and Tyler's narration. And now on a hot Sunday afternoon, we're moving to a cooler topic. Ice cream's origins are known to reach as far back as the 2nd century BC. We know that Alexander the Great enjoyed snow and ice flavored with honey and nectar. King Solomon was fond of ice drinks during harvesting. And during the Roman Empire, Nero frequently sent runners into the mountains for snow, which he then flavored with fruits and juices. But if you grew up in the mid-20th century or before, you're probably familiar with a childhood chant about ice cream. I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. It was, as you might imagine, a commercial slogan for a particular ice cream product. And you're probably quite familiar with the product. It's the Eskimo pie. The Eskimo pie was originally called the ice cream bar. Many of us have munched on an Eskimo pie, but it was invented by a high school teacher named Christian Kent Nelson in 1919 or 1920, and he originally called it the ice cream bar. Nelson had a confectionery store, and a boy showed up in the store and with only a nickel, and he couldn't decide whether to get chocolate or whether to get ice cream. And Nelson asked him why he didn't buy both, and the boy said, "Sure, I know, I want them both, but I only got a nickel." So this inspired Nelson to try to combine the two, and as you can imagine, it's not easy to take frozen ice cream and take hot chocolate and put it on without melting the ice cream. So he worked for 6 months and he created the Eskimo pie. It was such a success that by the next year, July 1921, he partnered with Russell C. Stover of Stover's Candies to market and produce the Eskimo pie, and by 1922, they were selling at the rate of 1 million bars a day. It caused the price of cocoa to go up 50%. In fact, it became so popular that the song was created in 1927 called I Scream, You Scream, We All Scream for Ice Cream. Recorded by Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians, became a Dixieland hit, and we're all going to sing it together just before intermission, and then we'll invite you to enjoy ice cream during intermission. And now I'll close with the title song of this concert, Your Grand Old Flag. It was written by George M. Cohan for his 1906 stage musical, George Washington Jr. Cohan did a lot of tongue-in-cheek, as you might imagine. Originally, Cohan entitled it, You're a Grand Old Rag. Look at this sheet music that's on the screen. It's called You're a Grand Old Rag. However, so many people and organizations objected to calling the flag a rag that he reneged, and he cleaned it up and renamed it You're a Grand Old Flag. During the concert, Tyler's going to tell you more about the origin of You're a Grand Old Rag. But songs such as You're a Grand Old Flag and America the Beautiful, which had just been published about 1906, it was written 10 years before, but it took 10 years to be published. Together, they created a shared popular cultural identity because these songs went beyond the stage. They went through sheet music and later on through records and even later on through radio to the homes and street corners of America. So while the choir and orchestra join me here in the chancel, here is an original 1906 recording by a singer named Billy Murray. He was a contemporary of George M. Cohan, and he's singing the original lyrics, You're a Grand Old Rag. You'll hear our version later on in the concert. Thank you for coming.
There's a feeling comes a stealing, and it sets my brain a-reeling when I'm listening to the music of a military band. Any tune like Yankee Doodle simply sets me off my noodle. It's that patriotic something that no one can understand. Way down south in the land of cotton, melody untiring, ain't that inspiring? Hurrah, hurrah, we'll join the Jubilee, and that's going some for the Yankees by gum. Red, white, and blue, I am for you. Honest, you're a grand old rag. You're a grand old rag. You're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true under red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. But should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old rag. I'm no cranky, hanky-panky, I'm a dead square honest Yankee, and I'm mighty proud of that old flag that flies for Uncle Sam. Oh, I don't believe in raving, every time I see it waving, there's a chill runs up my back that makes me glad I'm what I am. Here's a land with a million soldiers fast, if we should need 'em, we'll fight for freedom. Hurrah, hurrah, for every Yankee tar, and old G.A.R., every stripe, every star. Red, white, and blue, hats off to you. Honest, you're a grand old rag. You're a grand old rag. You're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true under red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. What should old acquaintance be forgot? Keep your eye on the grand old rag.
surprise Jack every year.
Well, friends, good afternoon. What a wonderful day this is it not? Are you excited about the concert today? Just a couple of quick announcements. The first one is if you have a cell phone, please take your cell phone out right now and put it on mute or turn it off, even better, for the concert itself. So will you go ahead and do that right now? I would like to say a wonderful thank you to the singers and the musicians. It's incredible. The music is excellent. I hope that you were here for the pre-concert lecture. Jack always does an amazing job, does he not? My name is Ross Purdy. I'm the senior pastor here, and I'd like to begin with prayer. Would you bow with me in prayer as we begin today? Oh God, we give you thanks for the ideals that you have given the founders of our country, for the ideals we celebrate today and this weekend, for the ideals we've not always lived up to, but the ideals we yearn to live into. As we hear the beautiful music this afternoon, draw our spirits into your presence to celebrate the blessings as we've been given from you as a nation, to remember the sacrifices of the men and women who gave so much to make it possible to grasp the idea of freedom for all. Oh God, join our hearts together as we celebrate the music of our country, the music that you have blessed us with. And may we truly celebrate this day as we thank you. Oh Lord, thank you for your goodness. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Well, friends, it is an honor for me to introduce to you a gentleman that we know as our Director of Music and Worship Arts Ministry, and boy, does he do worship and arts ministry. So I'd like to introduce you to the man, the reason why we're here today. Jack put this all together, again with the choir and the singers and the musicians. So Jack Lance, thank you for being here.
Hoist the colors. Color guard salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard 2. Color guard retreat.
In September of 1814, U.S. soldiers at Fort McHenry in Baltimore Harbor, after a 25-hour-long battle, raised a huge American flag to mark a critical victory in our nation's ongoing struggle for independence. As the smoke cleared on that historic morning, the image of these broad stripes and bright stars inspired the young poet Francis Scott Key to compose the words for what would soon become our national anthem. And so today, we present John Williams's special arrangement, written in 2014 to honor the 200th anniversary of the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner.
By
I know I've been gone for a while, but please. So I've said it before, and I will say it again. It is amazing what you can find in Jack and Paulette's closet. Welcome to our concert. This is the 12th Americana concert that we have offered here. Our concert is a celebration, if you will, of our country, our American people, our veterans, and this year we're going to celebrate that grand old flag, or, as some people have called it, that grand old rag. But we'll get to that a little bit later. For those of you not aware, my name is Tyler Wright, and it is so good to be back in Southern California. But I have a question. What's up with all the smoke? I haven't seen that much smoke since the Grateful Dead concert. That joke probably went right over your head, didn't it? Don't get much better than that, I tell you right now, at this particular point. Anyway, I am honored to be here again to serve as your host and MC. I'm also specifically honored to be here today. For those of you who have been coming to our concerts, you know that I have, for several years, referenced my father in these particular concerts. My father was a veteran who fought in World War II and the Korean War. He passed away in December. He loved this concert, although he was never able to attend it. But I would show him the video clips that Jack would send me, and he just took so much pride in this particular concert. And so, for all of our veterans, this concert is for you. For all of the American people, this concert is for you. For this amazing choir and orchestra, this concert is for you. And for my father, this concert is for him. Thank you. So let's begin. In the words of longtime LCPC member Dr. Ronald C. Wilson, after 4 long years of unspeakable horror and sacrifice, the Civil War was finally coming to an end. At his second inauguration, President Lincoln did not offer the North a victory speech that it so yearned for, nor did he blame the South solely on the sin of slavery. Calling upon the whole nation to account, he offered a moral framework, if you will, for peace and reconciliation. It was an amazing peace, a great peace, the victorious culmination of President Lincoln's lifelong struggle with the issue of slavery. Eventually, this malice towards none speech was accepted and then revered as one of the greatest speeches in our nation's history. In that speech were these lines: with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right that God gives us to see that right, let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind our nation's wounds, and to care for him who shall have suffered the battles, and for his widow and for his orphan. To do all which may achieve and cherish a just and everlasting peace amongst ourselves and with all nations. Welcome to our concert. My father was never able to come to these concerts, but I said earlier he enjoyed watching the videos. He never met Jack, but I will tell you that my father and Jack had a lot of common similar beliefs. One of them was that neither one of them think I'm funny. 4 days before my father passed away, and I think he sensed the time was come, he said to me, "Well, why don't you tell me one of them bar jokes to cheer me up?" Now, I'm going to tell you right now, telling a bar joke in a church is probably not very appropriate, and I'll probably get in trouble for this. But for my father, this is for him. 2 people walk into a bar. You think the second one would have ducked. Yeah, he looked at me too and said, "Yeah, that's right, you ain't funny." All right, on to the show. I find it a bit curious and odd that My Country 'Tis of Thee is actually based on a British tune, God Save the King. However, it's written with true American lyrics. Samuel Francis Smith wrote it while he was a student at the Andover Seminary in Massachusetts. It was first performed on July 4th, 1831, at the Park House Church in Boston as a celebration of our Independence Day. And if you were not aware, Dr. Martin Luther King actually recited the first verse in his very famous "I Have a Dream" speech while standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. as legend has it, and I think it was back in 1918, the famous founder of Boys Town, Father Edward Flanagan, saw a young man, I think his name was Reuben Granger, carrying another young man who had polio with his legs in splints. When Father Flanagan approached Reuben and said, "Isn't it hard to carry him?" The young man just looked at him and said, "He ain't heavy, Father. He's my brother." The most famous recording of "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother" was done by the Hollies, a British rock band. The guitarist, Tony Hicks, was asked about the recording of that song in an interview he did in 2006, and here's what he said. "In the 1960s, we were short of songs. I used to root around publishers in Denmark Street. One afternoon, I'd been there ages and wanted to get going, but this bloke said, 'Well, there's one more song. It's probably not for you.' There were frowns when I took it to the band, but we speeded it up and added an orchestra. The only things left recognizable were the lyrics. There'd been this old film called Boys Town about a children's home in America, and the statue outside showed a child being carried aloft with the motto, 'He ain't heavy, he's my brother.' We never got paid for it, nor did we ever ask for royalties. Elton John, though, at that time he was known as Reg, played piano on it and got paid 12 pounds. It was a worldwide hit twice. So with your permission, here is that song with full choir and orchestra, but no Sir Reg Elton John. dramatic moment. Hello, my name's Johnny Cash. Anybody remember that show? I got to tell you, I was rehearsing this script with one of my staff members up in Portland, and she looked at me and said, "Who's Johnny Cash?" My father loved Johnny Cash. In fact, my father, who was he'd say a hillbilly through and through, grew up on country music and loved that whole genre. Conway Twitty, Charlie Pride, all those people. And I learned to hate it because he would just play it over and over and over again. And so by the time I got to high school, I felt a little rebellious, and so I wore my hair all the way down to here, and I started playing rock and roll music in front of him. And one day he looked at me in disgust and he said, "I didn't know I had a second daughter. I should have named you Sue." Right? So, if you remember that television show, an episode in 1969, Mr. Cash gave a little speech with one major error. He introduced the song by saying, "It's reported that this song was sung by both sides in the Civil War." He was referring to the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and he couldn't have been more wrong about it. That song was written by Julia Ward Howe as a pro-union, anti-slavery song. However, he did go on later to say, "Well, I guess it just proves that a song can belong to everybody." And on that, he was absolutely right. This is our Battle Hymn of the Republic. The great American poet Robert Frost lived many years in Amherst, Massachusetts. When the town was beginning to create their bicentennial celebration in 1959, they commissioned the composer Randall Thompson, who you see up here, to write a tribute to the beloved poet. Thompson chose 7 of Frost's poems, which he eventually called that piece Frostiana. One of the poems he selected was Choose Something Like a Star. Now, Jack and I did not talk about this. He wrote this piece, but I don't think Jack even knows that that is one of my favorite poems of all time. And so when I read that, I went, oh, how wonderful. And for those who have not read it, I personally think it's kind of a response, if you will, to certain people who might be struggling or questioning the existence of God. Now, there's no political aspect to the poem in any way, shape, or form, but I do feel it's kind of about humankind's continuous journey to find that love, that option, that love, that grand, that big, big love, kind of like a star. Israel's greatest king, King David, was entering the twilight of his life. Mellowed by time and experience, he was very competent to advise. I find it kind of interesting that the last words that King David wrote and expressed were those of leadership. And here's what he said about leadership. 1, we must rule justly. 2, we may ask and must ask and rule in the fear of our God. And then 3, we should be the light of the morning at sunrise. Pretty simple rules, I think, for any leaders of governments, countries, organizations, and whatnot. The composer Randall Thompson, who you just heard from here, actually taught music composition at Harvard University. In 1949, he set those words, that's text, if you will, to music as a tribute to Serge Kozeletsky's 25th anniversary as the music director of the Boston Symphony. like to share with you an excerpt from the New York Times. It's a film review that was first published in October 1958. It says, William Wyler's The Big Country, which opened at the Astor last night, is a 2-hour and 46-minute Western designed to demonstrate that men should live in peace. But before this indisputable bit of wisdom is conveyed to most of the parties involved, the screen has been crowded with quarreling and fighting, and 3 of said parties have been killed. Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston have stood up toe-to-toe and slugged and slammed at each other until both have dropped bloody but unbowed. And it goes on and on and on and on. Peace is a pious precept, but fighting is more exciting. That's what it proves. Now, clearly, I think we all would agree we would love to live in peace, but why is peace so hard to achieve? What is that phrase, peace in our time? You know, I found out that originated in the Common Book of Prayers and also from the Latin Dona Nobis Pacem. It was also expressed by Tony Stark in the Iron Man film, but that's neither here nor there type of thing. Perhaps, though, the best part of that movie was the Oscar-nominated score written by Jerome Moross, which our orchestra is going to play the title tune for you. When Woody Guthrie wrote This Land Is Your Land in 1940, he was 27 years old. He wrote it in his room in a Fleabag hotel in Midtown Manhattan. Now, Guthrie was a little bit of an odd duck. He was a very curious wanderer, and it was said sometimes he would go out for a pack of cigarettes and not come back for a couple of weeks. But by the time he wrote that song, he'd pretty much seen most of the United States. From the big cities to the prairies to the mountains, he'd pretty much seen it all. And in his eyes, America was beautiful. But he also believed America was in trouble. And don't we always seem to be in some sort of trouble? Doesn't it seem like we're always trying to work ourselves out of some sort of trouble? And the work just continues on and on and on. I try to coach my young staff who I work with in the YMCA to achieve great things. We must do them together. And I think that's what we have to do here in America. Standing shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, hand in hand, working together to solve our big troubles and our big issues. And there's a lot of work still to be done. Ever written about America. So the term From Sea to Shining Sea was actually penned by Catherine Lee Bates in a poem whose lyrics eventually became America the Beautiful. But historians seem to want to credit that phrase to President Thomas Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase. Now, although the Purchase did double our nation's size, it never really reached the Pacific Ocean. That actually didn't happen until this amazing territory called California became a state in 1850. So what I would like you to do is I'd like you to sit back and enjoy this next piece as our orchestra takes us on a tour of the United States, from New York to San Francisco and anything in between. And by the way, if you want to clap your hands and stomp your feet and sing along, please do so. Enjoy. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see 'em bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, everybody, you know, that's also something that my father and Jack have in common. Neither one of them think I can sing. In fact, my dad told me one time, honey, you can't carry a tune as far as the door. There you go. However, that particular song, sung with that wonderful age-weathered voice of Louis Satchmo Armstrong, talks about the wonders of our world with such a pure and genuine tone that it just fills the soul with warmth and love. You probably didn't know, though, that that song was released in 1967 amidst the Vietnam War, when global tensions were high, and a lot of people had a very bleak outlook on the future of our world. The song, for me, it conjures up hope and unity, and that there are still so many things to enjoy about this beautiful world of ours. The lyrics, well, I think quite simply say that all you have to do is just look outside, and there's so much beauty to behold. And then you can just float away. This is What a Wonderful World. actually found this in Chuck Osborne's closet. Just saying. Just saying. My father loved ice cream sandwiches. So much so, something my sister and I didn't know, after his funeral, we began that painful process of having to clean things up. He had an old woodshed in the back of his house. In that woodshed was this freezer, which truly I never had opened. In fact, I didn't even know it was there. But upon opening it, there were about 24 boxes of these ice cream sandwiches. And that we gave them all to our family and had a big ice cream celebration. Here's some interesting facts about ice cream, though. In the summer of 1790, it is said that George Washington spent about $200 on ice cream. It's also said that Thomas Jefferson had this 18-step recipe, creating this amazing ice cream delicacy that might resemble baked Alaska today. And in 1813, Dolly Madison helped create this huge ice cream strawberry creation in celebration of President Madison's second inauguration. So before we break here for intermission, we are going to have one last number. It's a number you probably all know. It's a good tune of I Scream, You Scream, We All Scream for Ice Cream. We're going to ask you to join in with the words on the screen, and then afterwards, please join us outside for an ice cream sandwich. And I will see you all in the second half. So Jack came back in intermission and said, hey, you're funnier this year. And I said, because I only told one bad joke. So to ruin my record, here's 2 George Washington jokes. What did they call George Washington's teeth? Thank you. Presidentures. Hey, I'm just looking at these 2, okay? They're easily entertained, okay? Hey, so how come George Washington couldn't steal? Because he couldn't lie. I should have stopped at the first one. Timing. Well, welcome back to our second half. Let's get rolling. In June 1942, I know. I don't think it's worth. They've already told me they don't want to hear from me anymore. But I'm going to keep on going and see if I can carry the audience here, and then we'll check back here. All right, so in June 1942, U.S. and Japanese naval forces engaged in a 5-day battle in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that would eventually turn the course of the war. It was just 6 months after the attacks on Pearl Harbor. The U.S. Navy's decisive victory in this air, water battle and its successful defense of a major outpost on the island at Midway dashed the hopes of Japan, which was hoping to neutralize the United States as a military power in the Pacific. And it turned the tide of the battle, turned the tide of the war in our favor. The 1976 movie Midway, probably known more for the amazing score by John Williams than the cinematography and the script. So our wonderful orchestra is going to present a tune from that particular movie, along with some excerpts of that movie as well too. Welcome back. It was the greatest crisis in world history, World War II. Brutal dictators trying to impose their will, innocent citizens being targeted and murdered, tens of millions dying in intense fighting on the continents of Europe, Africa, Asia, and on the high seas. 16 million Americans served in uniform in that epic cause. Often overlooked, though, is the critical role millions of women played in attaining America's victory. It has been said that their mission was to free a man to fight, but we can never forget that in every way, it was their fight as well. Today, we pay tribute to all the women who served our country during World War II, here at home and on foreign soil, helping to defeat the forces of evil. They were American wives and mothers, sisters and cousins, patriots who knew that their country needed them. And they gave all in so many ways, as mechanics and motor pool drivers, radio operators and code breakers, clerks and war correspondents, gunners, mates and air traffic controllers, cooks, bakers, weather specialists, parachute riggers, aviators who flew cargo planes, and yes, even taught men how to fly. They were everywhere, working in factories and field offices, serving behind desks in headquarters and putting themselves in harm's way. Over 400 were killed defending our nation. And thousands more were held in prisons camps. All told, 350,000 women served in the United States Armed Forces. 19 million filled needed jobs in the workforce at home, and 12 million working in the defense industry. They came from every state and every background to join the cause, winning Distinguished Service Medals, Purple Hearts, Presidential Citations, and Bronze Stars. Helping in battle against the enemy overseas while far too often they battled stereotypes and discrimination here at home. History knows them as WACs and waves, women Marines and spars, WASPs and World War II nurses, Rosie the Riveters and volunteers. Women who gave their time and talent, and tragically, some gave their lives. But regardless of their role or their branch of service, what truly matters is the commitment and courage of these unsung heroes. Joining us today, representing all their sisters who serve, are female members of the greatest generation. Taps is a song that is traditionally played at military funerals. It was played at my father's. But it's also played every evening on all posts around the world to signal lights out. The original song was actually written by Brigadier General Daniel Butterfield of the Union Army during the Civil War. By the time the war was over, taps was being played by both Union and the Confederate to signal lights out. Now, you may not know this, but taps actually has lyrics. Now, it's traditionally played instrumentally, like a trumpet or a cornet or whatever it might be, but there are lyrics that were actually written for this song called Taps. The lyrics are, the day is done, gone the sun, from the lake, from the hills, from the sky. All is well, safely rest, God is nigh. When I was a young camp director for the YMCA, I used to lead that song at the final campfire for that week's session with all of our kids. Here today, we would like to dedicate this song to all of America's Gold Star families and for those who may have lost someone in service to our country. Now we come to the part of the show that is my personal favorite, as it was my father's as well, too. This is our Armed Forces Salute. When I showed the video of this the first time to my father, he said, "Boy, honey, who taught you how to salute?" And I said, "I don't know, Dad, I'm just an actor." And he said, "Well, you should act like you know what you're doing." So he taught me how to salute. And so in honor of him tonight, I will salute as my father did when he was in the Army itself. Our brave fighting men and women have been proudly serving our country in times of turmoil and times of peace. Today, we honor them and thank them for their service. In this particular piece, if you've not joined us before, this is our Armed Forces Salute. We're going to play the song of each of our Armed Forces divisions, if you will. And when you hear your song and when you hear it called out, we'd ask you to stand up if you served in that branch and be recognized by our audience. And when that song is done, we'd ask you to sit so that we can honor the others that we will be calling out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our Armed Forces Salute. States Navy. Thank you.
I also have a dream. It's not so different from the dreams of others. It's a dream about freedom in our country. I dream of a day where all people begin at the same level of respect. I dream of a day where I am judged by my own actions and not the actions of those who came before me. I am not colorblind. I believe God made each of us special in our own way, and we are all beautiful. I dream of a day when we can see and celebrate our differences, and justice is blind to everything but our actions. I dream of a day when we look at our flag and see the future, a bright future full of life and vibrant colors. I dream of a day where the flag represents the progress we have made, not the sins that still remain. There is one thing our flag has always represented, the United States. I dream of a day when our flag once again unites us instead of highlighting division. We are all precious in His sight, and in this one nation, under God, let us once again become indivisible with love, liberty, and justice for all.
So, Jack emailed me and said, I think I'm going to buy those hats so we can have them for future shows. And he said, what size is your hat size? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, you have a big head. I don't know if we can find hats that big. And he's right. Those hats hurt, Jack. Holy cow. Now, in this next piece, we are going to test your concentration a bit. After this piece, I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to ask you, did you recognize a certain American patriotic song in this next piece? Oh, and here's a little hint. Listen for the trombones. Pop quiz, pop quiz. What song do you think you heard? Anyone? Pardon me? Yes, what? That is so correct, and for a prize, you get to take home all the rest of the ice cream. Your parents aren't here, because I don't want them to hate me, right? Okay, right. Absolutely. Star Spangled Banner, played by our trombones.
The President of the United States, in the name of the Congress, takes pleasure in presenting the Medal of Honor to Lance Corporal William Kyle Carpenter, United States Marine Corps. By his undaunted courage, bold fighting spirit, and unwavering devotion to duty, in the face of almost certain death, Lance Corporal Carpenter reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men
Kyle Carpenter, United States Marine Corps. By his undaunted courage, bold fighting spirit, and unwavering devotion to duty, in the face of almost certain death, Lance Corporal Carpenter reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
As Americans, these words are the cornerstone of our country.
A declaration of rights that are to be honored and respected by those who are wise, brave, and proud to be an American.
For those willing to commit their lives to protecting our most precious symbol of freedom.
A tapestry of stars and stripes on a flag woven red, white, and blue.
In 1974, the great American artist Johnny Cash wrote of a ragged old flag. Ragged, old from the conflict and suffering that came with our fight for freedom. Pride in our flag, our country's symbol, should inspire us to keep striving to become a more perfect union.
County Courthouse Square. On a park bench, an old man was sitting there. I said, "Your courthouse is kind of run down," and he said, "Nah, it'll do for our little town." I said, "Your flagpole has leaned a little bit, and that's a ragged old flag you got hanging on it." He said, "Have a seat." And so I sat down. Is this the first time you've ever been to our little town?" I said, "I think it is." He said, "Well, I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag. You see, we got a little hole in that flag there when Washington took it over the Delaware. And it got powder burned the night Francis Scott Key sat watching it and wrote, 'Oh, say, can you see?' It got a bad rip in New Orleans when Pakenham and Jackson tugging at the seams. And it almost fell at the Alamo beside that Texas flag, but she waved on though. She got cut with a sword at Chancellorsville. She got cut again at Shiloh Hill. There was Robert E. Lee, Beauregard, and Bragg, and the south wind blew hard on that rugged old flag. On Flanders Field in World War I, she got a big hole from a Bertha gun. turned blood red in World War II. She hung limp and low a time or two. She was in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. She went pretty much where she went with Uncle Sam. She raved from our ships from the briny foam, but now they've just about quit waving her back here at home. In her own good land, she's here and been abused. She's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused. And that government for which she stands, well, it's scandalized throughout our land. She's getting pretty threadbare and wearing thin. I reckon she's in good shape in the shape she's in. Because she's been through the fire before, and I believe she can take a whole lot more. So we raise her up every morning, and we take her down every night. We don't let her touch the ground, and we fold her up just right. You know, on second thought, I do like to brag, because I'm mighty proud of that ragged old flag. Now, before we go on, here's a quick little commercial. There is an envelope, I believe, in your program. It's basically saying, would you please donate to the music here at LCPC? The funds you donate will continue to fund concerts such as this. Ushers will be here at the end of the concert with baskets, and, well, if you want to mail something back, please do so as well, too. We also continue our concert series this year with 2 more concerts in the fall, and I think they're up here on this slide. The best news of all is I don't host either one of those 2. And if you're looking for a church home, I really invite you to take a look at being part of our family. I miss this church, and I miss all these wonderful people. It was a big part of saving my life way back when. So I hope you'll join us. With that, we'll move on to our next piece. And again, we thank you for your generosity and your thought. And we thank you for being here as well, too, and spending this afternoon with us. So Your Grand Old Flag was written by George M. Cohan in 1906 for his stage musical George Washington Jr. It was the first song from a musical that sold over 1 million pieces of sheet music. Now, the original lyric came to George Cohan later on as he explained that, well, he met a gentleman, I'm going to read this here for us. He met a gentleman who was a Civil War veteran who fought at Gettysburg. Cohen said the 2 men found themselves next to each other, and Cohen noticed that the vet had a carefully folded but ragged old flag. The man reportedly then turned to Cohen and said, "Yep, she's a grand old rag." That inspired Cohen. He thought, what a great title for a song. And so he wrote, "You're a grand old rag." But as things would happen, a lot of people didn't like the flag being called a rag. And so in the immortal way of George M. Cohan, he said, well, I'm just going to give them what they want. And he changed the title to You're a Grand Old Flag.
You're a grand
personally think I make this look good. That's just me. It does suit me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So you may think of Stars and Stripes Forever in putting that together with Independence Day, but did you know it was actually written on Christmas Day? In his autobiography, John Philip Sousa said he composed it aboard a steamship as he was crossing the Atlantic on Christmas Day, 1896. He actually penned it with a working title, Xmas 1896. Today, it is our national march anthem. Here is John Philip Sousa's Stars and Stripes Forever. Eastern Time, they sang two songs. The first one was We Are the World, and the second one was America the Beautiful. So as we close out our show today with America the Beautiful, I once again want to thank each and every one of you for welcoming me back. Thank you for indulging my wonderful sense of humor. Thank you for allowing me to tell stories about my father. I love this place. I love this country. It's still America the Beautiful. There's so much more.